Hello friends, welcome to Expert Guidance, and today in this video we'll be covering the chapter Organic Chemistry. Just to remind you, for your paper 2, you need to cover the topic rates and equilibrium, organic chemistry, chemical analysis, chemistry of the atmosphere, and using resources. All these videos can be found in this playlist, and in this video we'll be focusing just on organic chemistry. So it's a complete revision summary of everything you need to know for organic. So I would recommend you to watch the video till the end so that you can understand all the concepts in sequence. So what we'll be covering in this video is what are hydrocarbons in crude oil, alkanes, fractional distillation, properties of hydrocarbon, cracking, alkenes, reactions of alkenes, alcohols, carboxylic acid, addition polymerization, condensation polymerization, amino acids, and DNA. So let's begin. Now, whenever we talk about organic chemistry, we basically talk about hydrocarbons. Now, what are hydrocarbons? Hydrocarbons are the compounds which are made up of carbon and hydrogen only. And from where do this hydrocarbon comes? It comes from crude oil. Now, crude oil is a black thick liquid which takes millions of years to form. And the best part is that different components of the crude oil have different boiling points, so you can separate them by the process known as fractional distillation. Remember this word, fractional distillation, as often in the exam they ask you to explain and even explain the term fractional and distillation. So let's see. Now, before we come into fractional distillation, let us see what are the different properties that each of the components of the crude oil has. Now, the properties of the crude oil, it depends on the chain length. So, if the chain length increases, the boiling point increases. Now, what is the boiling point? It is the temperature at which hydrocarbon boils. It increases with increase in chain length. Why? Because greater the chain length, greater the surface area between the molecules, and higher the boiling point. Next is volatility. Volatility is a property that how quickly it can convert into a vapor. And naturally, lower the boiling point, more volatile the substance would be. So with increase in chain length, the volatility decreases. Next is viscosity. Viscosity is thickness of the fraction, and naturally greater the chain, greater is the thickness, so the viscosity increases as the chain length increases. And last property is flammability, or the property of ignition, which is how quickly something burns, and it decreases with increase in chain length, because longer the chain length, it is difficult to burn that molecule or the hydrocarbon. So the chain length increases from top to bottom, the boiling point increases, the volatility decreases, viscosity increases, and flammability decreases. So you should know what is the meaning of all these terms and how they vary across the chain length. Now, this is the fractionating column for the fractional distillation of crude oil. Now, remember the important bits in here. At the top, we have a low temperature, and at the bottom, we have a higher temperature. So at the top, we get shorter chain fractions, and at the bottom, we get a longer chain fractions. Okay, now, what is fractional distillation? Fractional distillation is separating in the fractionating column with different substances of similar boiling point. So each fraction has the components or the hydrocarbon with a similar boiling point. So fuel oil is one fraction, diesel oil is one fraction. And distillation is separating on the mixtures of boiling point. So the crude oil has all the components which differs in their boiling point. So we can use this property by taking a fractionating column and maintaining the series of temperature. At the bottom, the higher temperature, and at the top, the lower temperature. Now we heat the crude oil at a very high temperature and put it inside this crude oil at the bottom. The vapors will start to rise, and the shorter chain ones, which has the lower boiling point, they will condense at the top, followed by the medium chain and the higher boiling point liquids at the bottom. Okay, now what are the different fractions? You need to remember these different fractions in the order. So at the top, we get liquefied gas, then we get gasoline, then kerosene, diesel oil, and residue. The liquefied gas is used as a fuel. Gasoline or petrol is used for car fuels. Kerosene is used for aircraft fuels. The diesel oil is used in diesel engines, and residue is making roads. The mnemonic to remember that is, look great, kid doing roll. So L stands for liquefied gas, G stands for gasoline, K stands for kerosene, D stands for diesel oil, and R stands for residue. So you should know this fractional distillation setup. which temperature is at the top, which is at the bottom, what are the various fractions we get, in what order, where do we get shorter chain fractions, where do we get longer chain fractions, and the uses of these fractions. So this slide is very, very important. Okay, next we have another technique called cracking. Now, what is cracking? As the name suggests, crack means to break. So cracking is the thermal decomposition of the longer chain hydrocarbon into a shorter chain alkane and an alkene. So you can look in this example. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hydrocarbon long, and we broke them into 2 carbon ethene and then 5 carbon shorter alkane. Now, why do we do cracking? And this question is also asked in the exam many times. So we do cracking because we need shorter chain alkanes, because shorter chain alkanes are more in demand because they're good fuels. And the fractional distillation alone cannot fulfill the demands of shorter chain alkane. The second thing is why we require cracking is we require alkenes for polymerization, and alkenes are required to synthesize other hydrocarbons, which fractional distillation cannot give. Okay, so you should know what is cracking. In the exam, they can give you any compound. They can ask you write the name, write the formula for 20 carbon hydrocarbon. So 20 carbon alkane would be, we'll see later, it has the formula CnH2n plus 2. So that would be C10H42. You need to do its thermal cracking. So remove an alkene which has a C2H4 formula, and then you are left with 18 and 38 hydrogen. So they can ask you to write a cracking equation. Why is cracking done? And what are the ways in which we do cracking? Either we give a high temperature, that is thermal cracking, or we use a catalyst, which is a catalytic cracking. Okay, so I hope this cracking concept is clear to you. Now let's see what are hydrocarbons. The first family of hydrocarbons is alkanes. How do we define alkanes? You have to define it by using the word saturated hydrocarbon. Saturated means it contains carbon-carbon single bonds. You can see all these molecules has carbon-carbon single bonds. And hydrocarbons, because they are made up of carbon and hydrogen only, the general formula is CnH2n plus 2. So the first member would be CH4, C2H6, C3H8, C4H10, and pentane C5H12. So whatever the number of carbon is, you double it and add 2 for the number of hydrogen. Now, if you look at methane, ethane, propane, butane, all these members, they have the same functional group, that is, they all have alkanes. They show similar chemical properties and they have the same general formula. But they will have different physical property. As you can see, methane has 1 carbon, so it will have a shorter boiling point as compared to pentane, which is a longer hydrocarbon. So all these members differ in physical properties, and each next member differs. So you can see in this homologous series, they have the similar functional group, similar chemical properties, same general formula, but one member differs from the successive one by 1 carbon and 2 hydrogen. So CH4 add 1 carbon 2 hydrogen gives C2H6. C2H6 add 1 carbon 2 hydrogen is C3H8. So this is what is the definition of homologous series, and it is often asked in the exam. So make sure you remember this. So homologous series are the members of the same family having similar functional group, similar chemical properties, general formula, but different physical property, and each member is different from successive by CH2 group. Now, next is reaction of alkanes. Now, alkanes show only 2 types of combustion, complete and incomplete. What is a complete combustion? Combustion is when the fuel is completely burned. So hydrocarbon plus oxygen give carbon dioxide and water, and it is not toxic as it is not producing any harmful gases. On the other hand, incomplete combustion is when the fuel is partially burned due to limited supply of oxygen. So the hydrocarbon, it burns to give carbon monoxide and water. Now, it is toxic as carbon monoxide is a toxic gas. It decreases the oxygen carrying capacity of the red blood cells. Therefore, it is very harmful and a toxic gas. So incomplete combustion is harmful. So in the exam, you should be able to write the equations of complete and incomplete combustion. Remember, incomplete, take the carbon dioxide and water out. And in incomplete, write carbon monoxide and water and balance the equation. Okay? Now, the next thing we need to do is, how will you test the product of combustion? Now, combustion gives carbon dioxide and water. For carbon dioxide is a lime water test. You do the combustion reaction, the gas level is boiled, you pass it to a lime water, it will turn lime water milky. For the water test, you take anhydrous copper sulfate, and when you add water to the anhydrous copper sulfate, it will turn blue. Or You pass the water through blue cobalt chloride paper and it will turn pink. So cobalt chloride and copper sulfate is both the test of combustion products. Now let's see what are functional groups. Now we have seen hydrocarbons, and alkanes are hydrocarbons. At times, apart from hydrogen and carbon, you get some other atoms like alcohols as OH, carboxylic acid has COOOH and COO. These groups of atoms, which give special properties and reactions to the organic molecules, are functional groups. And you have 4 functional groups in your syllabus: alkenes, which is a double bond. An example is ethene, propene, butene, and pentene, and we can form it by cracking of crude oil. Alcohols is a hydrocarbon chain with an OH, and we name it with all. So 1 carbon alcohol is methanol, 2 carbon is ethanol, propanol, butanol, and pentanol. And we can make alcohol by reacting alkene with water or steam. And carboxylic acid is COOH, which is methanoic acid, ethanoic acid, propanoic acid, butanoic acid, and we get them by oxidation of alcohols. And esters is methyl ethanoate, ethyl ethanoate, and we get it by the reactions of alcohols and carboxylic acid. So now let us see all of them in detail. Now what is alkene? Now since alkene has a double bond, which makes it unsaturated hydrocarbon. So alkenes are unsaturated hydrocarbons, that is the compound made up of carbon and hydrogen only, where a carbon-carbon double bond is present. General formula is CnH2n, and it is used to make polymers, alkanes, and alcohols, and we'll be seeing next how we can do that. So it always starts with ethene, then propene, then butene, and pentene. So you draw the number of carbons, put double bond, and remember each carbon can make 4 bonds. So fill the rest of the valencies of rest of the carbons with the number of hydrogens, and you will see that the carbon and hydrogens, they'll be in the ratio 1:2. Okay. Now, what are the reactions of alkene? This is very important. Okay. Watch it very, very properly and make sure you are able to write these reactions. First is combustion. Combustion is both complete and incomplete. So you can take any alkene, react it with oxygen. If it forms carbon dioxide and water, it is complete combustion. And if it forms carbon monoxide and water, it is incomplete combustion. Then it shows addition reactions. Now, what are the addition reactions? When you react it with halogen, then the double bond breaks into the single bond, and these 2 molecules, they attach to each side of the double bond. So when you take an ethene, you react it with bromine water, and this is a test to distinguish between alkane and alkene. The bromine water is orange yellow in color, and if you pass it through alkenes, it will turn clear. So alkenes decolorizes bromine water. So you take alkene and then you react it with bromine, the double bond breaks into the single bond and bromine attach here. Similarly, when you react it with hydrogen, the double bond breaks into a single bond and each hydrogen attaches to each side. So alkene becomes alkane, and here you use nickel catalyst at 60 degrees. For water, when you react it with water, the double bond breaks into the single bond and hydrogen goes on one side, OH goes on one side, so ethene produces ethanol. So by addition reaction from alkane, you can get haloalkanes, you can get alkanes back, and when you use water, you can get alcohols. Okay, so these are all the reactions of alkene. Make sure you are able to write these whole reactions. Okay, next is very important, manufacture of ethanol. Now, ethanol is an alcohol which we get either by fermentation of glucose, that is anaerobic respiration of glucose, or we have just seen when you take ethene and pass it through water, you get ethanol. So that is hydration of ethene. Now, hydration of ethene required nickel catalyst and a high temperature and pressure, whereas for fermentation, we require gentle temperature and pressure. The advantages of fermentation is, since you're using glucose or the plant-based sugar products, this reaction uses renewable resources, so it is less dependent on fossil fuels and make less harms and have less energy requirements. On the other hand, when you do hydration of ethene, it takes ethene from crude oil and it uses non-renewable resources. But the advantages of hydration of ethene is it's a continuous process. You can just put everything in a mixture and keep the reaction going on. It is rapid, more efficient, make more pure ethanol, and since it is the only product, it has 100% atom economy because it has no side products. On the other hand, fermentation is a batch process. You cannot make the reaction go on because as soon as the alcohol concentration increases, it will kill the yeast. So you need to do make certain quantity of alcohol and distill off and then do the reaction again. So the reaction is slow, produces impure ethanol, and the atom economy is not 100%. So both of these processes has its own advantages and disadvantages. And in the exam, they'll ask you to explain for both the methods, and you have to explain the reaction condition, advantages and disadvantages. So make sure you remember this table and contrast the benefits of each of the methods and disadvantages. Next is alcohols. Alcohol have the functional group OH. The general formula is CnH2n plus 1 OH. So if you take N as 1, the first carbon is methanol with CH3OH. 2 carbon is ethanol, 3 carbon is propanol, 4 carbon is butanol. So you have 1 carbon with OH and then 3 hydrogen, 2 carbons with OH, and fill the rest of the valencies with OH. And the alcohols are used as fuels, solvents, and spirits. Okay, so I hope what are alcohols is clear to you and you're able to draw the displayed formula and the general formula of different alcohols. Now, the reactions of alcohol, first is combustion. As we have done alkenes, so all hydrocarbons choose a combustion reaction. In a complete combustion, ethanol or any alcohol with oxygen give carbon dioxide and water. And in incomplete combustion, any alcohol with oxygen give carbon monoxide and water. Next is the oxidation. When you oxidize an alcohol, it converts into an corresponding carboxylic acid. So methanol will convert into methanoic acid, ethanol will get converted into ethanoic acid, propanol will convert into propanoic acid. And for this, you require an oxidizing agent, which is generally the potassium dichromate. And alcohol, basically, they act as like an acid. So they react with the metal to form a salt and hydrogen. So alcohols react with metal to form a salt and hydrogen. So here we have ethanol with calcium, and it forms calcium ethanoate plus hydrogen. Okay, so I hope all these reactions are clear to you. Next, we have the carboxylic acid. Carboxylic acid have the functional group C double bond OH. So 1 carbon is HCOH, which is methanoic acid. 2 carbon is CH3COH, which is ethanoic acid. 3 carbon is CH3CH2COH, which is propanoic acid. And butanoic acid is CH3CH2CH2COH. Now, carboxylic acid are considered as weak acid, and they'll ask you in the exam, why is it a weak acid? So you have to give this definition that weak acids are those which are partially dissociated in water to release H plus ions. And then you have to give this equation: CH3COH breaks into CH3CO minus plus H plus. Now, since it's an acid, it reacts with metal oxides and hydroxide to form salt and water, and it reacts with carbonate to form salt and carbon dioxide and water. Okay, so I hope you remember these reactions and why carboxylic acid is a weak acid. Next is an esters. Esters are the last functional groups you need to know. It's the fruity smelling compounds which is used in the manufacture of perfume, foods, and cosmetics. They are formed by the reaction of carboxylic acid and esters to form esters and water. Now, how will you name the ester? Whatever the alcohol is, write its name as IL and carboxylic acid as OH. So, for example, if you take methanoic acid and methanol, the alcohol becomes alkyl, so that is methyl, and carboxylic acid, methanoic acid, become methanoate. In the same way, ethanol plus methanoic acid, alcohol becomes yle, so that is ethyl, and methanoic acid becomes methanoate plus water. And to write its reaction, you will write the methanoic acid and methanol facing each other, remove the molecule of water, and whatever is left, join it together. Similarly, ethanol and methanoic acid, join them together, whatever is left, move the water, that will be your ester. Okay, now we have done the functional group. Now the last thing you need to do is the polymers. Now, what are polymers? Now, if you see in this figure, this is an individual unit, and you can see this is repeated, and this repeating unit is a polymer. So the individual unit that polymerizes to form a polymer is known as a monomer. Example, ethene. So ethene is a monomer, and the structure formed by the polymerization of the monomer is the polymer. Example, polyethene. So you can see CH2 double bond CH2 is an ethene, and it forms this polymer. Now I'll tell you the trick how you need to write the polymer equation. Always write the ethene or any alkene molecule such that there's a double bond in the center and all the groups are at the top, at the bottom, nothing to the left and the right side. And when you polymerize this structure, remove the double bond, draw the bars at the end, and then write N. That becomes a repeating unit. So for example, if the ethene molecule is given to us, then this will be our ethene, and I'll write N in front of it. And to make the polymer, I'll convert the double bond into single bond, join it to the ends, and then write N in the bottom. Now, ethene is simple. For example, you have propene. So what is the structure of propene? Propene is 1, 2, 3 carbon and a double bond, right? This is what is the structure of propene. Right? Now, how I will write it. As I told you, you will always draw this double bond at the center. So at the center, I'll draw C double bond CH, and this has 2 hydrogens, and this carbon has 1 hydrogen, and then it has CH3, so I'll write CH3 at the top. So I have it in this notation. I'll polymerize it, that is N molecule, and then when I make the polymer, I'll remove the double bond into single bond, join it with the ends, and then all the group remains the same. So if you write the notation always in this form, that a double bond in the center and everything at the top and the bottom, then the polymerization equation would be very easy for you. So you should know how to write polyethene, polypropene, and polybutene. So addition polymers, they are formed by addition reaction. They require only one monomer. Generally, it's an alkene. Nothing is lost in the reaction. Example, polyethene and polypropene. The other types of polymerization, we have a condensation reaction. It requires 2 monomers and 2 functional groups. For example, we have this molecule. We are representing it with the box as a schematic representation, has an OH at both ends, and then other molecule has C double bond OH at both ends. Now, when we put them together, we will remove the molecule of water by a condensation reaction. So OH, the hydrogen will be lost here, and the OH will be lost here. So what we are left with, O, and then C double bond O, and again C double bond O. So you can see that this is the new bond that is formed by a condensation reaction. So we have 2 functional groups facing each other. We have removed the molecule of water. A small molecule like water is lost. Example, nylon or polyester. This is between alcohol and carboxylic acid. So this is a polyester. An example is nylon. Okay, so this is the difference between addition and a condensation polymers. Addition requires 1 monomer. It requires 2 monomers or 2 functional group. In addition, nothing is lost. Here, a small molecule is lost. Addition polymers are formed by addition reaction. They are formed by condensation reaction. Now we have some natural polymers. They are found naturally. For example, complex biomolecules. Starch is a polymer made up of glucose, and protein is also a polymer made up of amino acids. So it's the other way around. The polymer is the protein and it is made up of amino acid, and the DNA is the polymer made up of nucleotides. So you can see this is an individual glucose unit. Either they join by a straight chain or a branch chain and give rise to starch, glycogen, or cellulose, which are the natural polysaccharides. And these individual glucose are the monosaccharides. And 2 amino acids. Amino acids have the carboxylic group and an amino acid group together, amine group. When they join together, a molecule of water is lost and it forms a peptide bond, and they are the condensation polymers. DNA is a polynucleotide we have done in biology, so it's just a brief recap. Nucleotide means a phosphate, sugar, and a base. So you can see a phosphate, sugar, base. Phosphate, sugar, base is repeated. In a DNA, the sugar is deoxyribose. Phosphate and nitrogenous bases are 4: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. And they show complementary base pairing principle. With adenine next to it is thymine, and with guanine next to it is cytosine. Okay, so I hope all this concept of organic chemistry is clear to you. Now you should have a go at these key terms: hydrocarbons, crude oil, fractional distillation, alkanes, saturated hydrocarbon, unsaturated hydrocarbon, general formula, viscosity, flammable, volatility, fractions, complete combustion, incomplete combustion, cracking, thermal decomposition, alkenes, functional group, homologous series, addition reaction, alcohols, carboxylic acid, esters, fermentation, weak acid, monomers, polymers, addition polymerization, condensation polymerization, monosaccharide, polysaccharide, starch, cellulose, proteins, and DNA. Have a go at these terms. If you're still unclear, watch the video again and then come to the website and check the answer. So as always, our next step, check the specification, make sure everything which is there in the specification is still clear to you, and do exam questions on this topic. Okay, and do not forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified as soon as I put a new video. And if you have any doubts, leave a comment below and I'll reply you as soon as possible. So I'll see you next in the next video. Till then, happy revising.